Good evening. Happy Sunday, everyone. It's Shireen coming to you this Sunday, and I'm just going to follow up on the topic that I posted from last week regarding caregivers and just some of the often overlooked needs that caregivers have, right? So caregivers are so important when it comes to advanced care planning and just taking care of our loved ones and the people that are so often in care of daily need and care. Okay, so our caregivers, their role usually entails helping with the decision making for our loved ones, emotional support, some of the practical assistance needs, of course, some of the logistical care, some as appointments, making some of the, of course, daily needs, right? Some of the activities of daily living, okay, providing comfort to the individual, and some of the other very challenging decisions that they may need over the course of life and illness. Okay, also there are also educational and resources that these caregivers may also require to also assist our loved ones in their care planning. Okay, so they support and help to plan and also help to navigate the healthcare system and to help access the necessary tools to acquire these resources. But moving forward with some of the things that the caregivers need and often are overlooked, right? Because in order to care for people, you really need to be able to help to care for yourselves and also be able to identify the resources that you will also need to be able to take care of yourself, because once you're cared for yourself, you are then able to adequately and best be able to care for others. Okay, so some of those challenges are, one, some are emotional challenges, right, such as stress and anxiety, okay, being able to have a adequate balance, okay, with the emotions that comes with that, right, caretaking for the people that we know over our lifetimes were healthy, right? The people that raised and cared for us, and being able to navigate that in our emotional health, right? And some of the guilt or doubts that may come with being able to, am I making the right decision, right? Anticipatory angst that may come regarding end-of-life decisions or the situations regarding end-of-life decision making, right? How about grief? That anticipatory grief. Because you're taking care of individuals or caretaking for individuals or decision making for individuals or coming to the close or to the latter part of their life, right? And to be able to fulfill those preferences and values that they have listed and named. And it's a great responsibility. And you are concerned that you're making the right decisions, right? And following that their needs and wants are carried out. And that comes with some stress and anxiety and may, of course, cause you some grief, because it's a grieving process, because they're not the same people, right? And aren't able to do the same things that we know them to be able to do in the earlier years of their lives, right? Okay, so communication also is another barrier. In some families, of course, we may have different ideas among family members, among siblings, in-laws, about what decisions are to be made. Okay? Should you place the family member in a care facility? Should the family member be cared for at home? Right? The caregiver who's been caring for the individual may come to a point where the individual is now advanced in their illness and it becomes too much for them to care for them at home by themselves. And this decision is now up for discussion among the family to decide what's next. And this can be an area of conflict. Okay? What can they now do? And this can be an area of stress, and the caregiver may be facing some additional challenges with that. Okay? There can be some physical and financial burdens. A lot of times, or there's this term called the sandwich generation, right? So you're a working person, you have your children, right? You have a husband, children, and all of that, school age, and then you have a parent that you're caring for. So you have your household to manage, and now you have a parent that you're caring for. That can pose a great financial and physical burden. Okay, so caregivers in that situation must or should try to find a way to maintain their own health and not neglect their own health, and be able to navigate some of these very tough situations so they're not neglecting themselves. Why? Because if they're not caring for themselves, they're unable to adequately care for their families, their children, parents, and their spouses, right? And also be able to work in the marketplace, which if you're of that age, often you're doing also that as well, okay? So the financial strain can be you have to take off work very often, right? Because family has to go to doctors. How do you navigate that? Okay? Transportation. Is there specialized equipment, specialized transportation that's needed? If your loved one is in a wheelchair, there are so many things that you need to do to be able to adequately care for your loved one. Okay? And this can also lead to a lot of exhaustion, right? So that's that physical toll that this may take on you. Okay? And this is a great high physical demand. And so we must be careful to analyze this and pull all our resources. If you have siblings, other family member, community resources, church, any of those items, be able to pull those in and be able to ask for assistance and be able to navigate this better, okay? Which is very, won't say it's easy to say, but it's not a very, ideal situation for people to be in. But as much as you can, identify those resources and ask for help. Because oftentimes, a lot of people suffer in silence. And sometimes all it does is just to reach out, and you may be able to get some assistance. Okay? And speaking of that, we do have, the lack of resources, and educating oneself about the resources that are available. Okay? Identify those resources, the support systems, as well as legal and policy knowledge. Identify or knowing how to navigate the legal and healthcare systems, which does take time. It's very time consuming to learn all of these things. Okay? But being able to advocate for yourself and the loved ones as the caretaker So you can identify resources such as respite. Okay, identify resources that adult daycare, some of these things that you can use to give yourself some time to be able to help alleviate some of those pressures while taking care of your loved ones. Okay, next we're going to go on to some of additional to the emotional impact, the additional psychological parts, right? So over time, once these emotional stresses build up, if they're not addressed, if they're not alleviated, if there's not adequate outlet for the stress, and if we don't have enough resources and people to help us navigate these things, we end up with burnout. Okay? Burnout is not just a term that's used for people in the healthcare system. Burnout is a real thing for caregivers. Okay? Chronic stress and lack of self-care does lead to emotional exhaustion, okay, depression, and feelings of hopelessness or being overwhelmed. Okay, overwhelmed with all the things that needs to be done. You have to take care of your loved one, your children, yourself. You have to work. You have to pay bills. You have to go to the doctors. You have to take the kids to the pediatrician. You have to do all of these things, and you are so far down on the level of responsibility and self-care that it leads to you neglecting yourself, right? So you start to neglect your personal goals or your responsibility to your spousal relationships because you're focusing on caring for everybody else. Okay? So this is something to be very mindful of. Okay, some of the strategies for maintaining or managing some of these anticipatory grief items, okay, is to first acknowledging that you're feeling this way. That's really the first step. You know, sometimes it's hard to ask for help. You know, someone saying, "Are you doing?" "I'm okay, I'm all right, I'm this and that." But the first step is to say, "I'm not doing okay. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm not okay." All right? To normalize that you are grieving. You're grieving that you're not the self that you want to be. You're not where you are or where you want to be, or you're not in the space or place in life where you thought you would be, or you're grieving that your parent is ill or chronically ill, or you saw a different future for them or for yourself, okay? Identifying these feelings of sadness and grief and guilt and anxiety and just naming them, okay? And identifying them and giving yourself some permission, okay, to experience that and feel it, and just to have those emotions to the forefront so you can identify and name them, okay? Also, journaling and writing things down, focusing on some mindfulness is helpful. Having some therapeutic sessions with a counselor, communicating either in a group settings with the clergy member, seeking counseling with other people such as social workers may be very helpful. Speaking with other loved ones, okay? You might have other siblings that you want to talk to, kind of vent your frustrations, if that's helpful, to kind of talk with each other. If you're caregiving with others, speak with them about it, okay? So you don't feel so isolated, okay?